All right, welcome everyone. Today is April 7th, 2026, and you are at EDU Endpoint office hours. I hope you all had a lovely Easter weekend. I don't know if anyone ate anything good. I had some smoked ribs, and we did an Easter egg hunt in the backyard for the kiddos, so we had a lot of fun. Hopefully y'all had some time with family and friends as well. Um, we are talking about today, we'll go through our standard updates, just a few different things, and then the highlight of today, we are talking about the new scoped permissions public preview, and we have invited Dave Randall, who's part of the product group, to come speak about this. He graciously accepted, although he's not entirely sure what he got himself into. So I do ask that everybody be kind, be nice. We do want him to come back eventually. So if y'all scare him away, that's on y'all, not on me. So we'll go through a few of these updates and then we'll pass it over to him to talk about that. Richard, am I missing anything?
No, these guys aren't going to tar and feather Dave. I think we're all
good. Awesome. Okay, so just as a quick reminder, last month, if you didn't catch it, technical takeoff did occur. So you can go and access all of those sessions. They were all recorded and posted up on YouTube. So you can get to that at aka.ms/technical takeoff. Lots of good sessions. I think I was late to the last office hours call, but there was some really good ones that occurred there, and I think Richard touched on those. But again, go watch those and check them out. They're pretty good. I will go ahead and throw in the links in the chat if I can make them pretty for you. Bam, there they are. Copy and paste game is on point today. So just a few updates that we'll go through. I don't want to take too much time with this, is that there were, and I should really just pull open my browser here. Let me just do this.
So Garrett, I actually ninja edited the deck with some links, or with a link.
Of course you did. Of course you did. When did you do that?
So your link dump isn't complete, but I will post what I posted. It's the secure boot updates and announcements.
Okay, I was like, there's only one that I see, so I'm pretty close.
Yeah, you're close.
Okay,
you're close.
I'm usually pretty close. Okay, couple of blogs that were posted by the Intune customer success team. One specifically around migrating frontline mobile devices into Intune. So I don't know that this touches on a bunch of the education customers, but if you're an academic medical center, from healthcare perspective, I generally see some of you have these frontline devices. So if you're looking to migrate over those to Intune, this is just some really good tips and tricks on migrating kind of a mix of iOS and Android devices over into Intune. So if that's you, definitely encourage you to check out that blog. I'm going to admit, I did not read this blog. This blog showed up about 14 minutes ago before this call. So this is one about creating historical reports using Azure Log Analytics and Intune diagnostic data. Again, we've got the diagnostic settings in Intune that you can go ahead and enable, and we can port those over into Log Analytics for you to be able to query against it. Again, I really haven't read the blog too much, but if this is something that you're looking to do in your environment, here are some practical steps on how to do that and kind of build your own data warehouse-esque type of solution there for you. So actually, I'll need to go back and read that.
Just slide down all the way to the bottom, because I think what the main benefit of this is, if you go all the way to the bottom, you can actually add these log analytics reports to your dashboard within the Intune Admin Center. So instead of it being hidden, in log analytics and having to go over there and try to mess with that, now we can just pipe these directly to the dashboard.
That's cool.
To your own private dashboard on the Intune Admin Center. So that's
cool.
It's pretty neat.
That is pretty cool. We'll have to test that out. Okay, moving on. My little Teams bar is in the way because that's what we always fight with. Of course, the 2603 release of Microsoft Intune. Couple of the big highlights. You guys have already dug into a lot of this already, and this is obviously the topic of today's session, but more timely notifications for Microsoft Intune. So we're improving how those devices are interacting with the Intune service and getting the notifications directly from Intune, specifically around remote help. And so we are taking advantage of the same channel that actually Microsoft Teams is using. And so there's a new endpoint that you will want to add to your firewalls. Again, this is starting with remote help, but I think it's kind of the beginnings of more to come around this, just to improve the communication between the Windows devices and Intune. So this is specifically for Windows devices, but want to make sure that you are all aware of that endpoint. I think more to come on that, and that's kind of what it's saying is stay on top of this with the documentation, the INE logs documentation and the remote help documentation. Scope permissions, obviously, that's what we're talking about today, so I'm going to skip over that because I don't want to steal anyone's thunder. And then we have some improvements around management options to further protect Apple devices with those new DTM policies. We've talked about this a few times before, where we are continuing to improve all of the policies within Intune to be grounded more in those DTM policies that Apple has. And so we're continuing to make progress there through that. It looks like lots of different areas for that. So again, if you have a lot of mobile devices inside your tenant, that's going to be good news. Another kind of a reminder blog in a lot of ways. If you are a Windows 365 customer and you're utilizing the Intune suite, we're just highlighting how they are better together and complement, and you can take advantage of the Intune suite capabilities directly on a Windows 365 machine. But just as a reminder too, that the Intune suite is coming to E3 and E5, different components respectively of the suite into those two solutions. This is not A5. Again, not saying that this is for the EDU tenants, but some of our education customers do have the E SKUs in their tenants. So again, predominantly that I've seen, that's academic medical centers or research institutes. If you have those commercial licenses, you will get the Intune suite capabilities. I believe it's August 1st is the tentative date. But that's just a blog highlighting those capabilities coming to the M365 SKUs and how it works better on Windows 365.
You're very brave to bring this blog post up. I don't know if you read all the blog posts before you before you went through.
I did, but like, you know,
there are
I'm not
some
going to
people.
shy away from it. Like, yeah, there are some people. I'm not going to exclude anyone.
People. There are some.
You know, and like even Dave's here, he's hearing it directly. We want Intune Suite in A5. Chant it now. That's your opportunity.
Yeah, we definitely need Intune Suite in A5 and A3.
And I'll also say that if you are represented through, if you have an account executive, if you have a customer success account manager or a CSAM that they're called now, they used to be called TAMs, bring it up with them on those monthly calls when you connect with them and let them know that this is what you want. And part of mine and Richard's job is to help facilitate that feedback back to engineering and show that demand. So we will help do that. So send us the nasty grams.
Well, not us directly. Send it to your account teams.
I mean, we won't take it personally, but yeah, send it to your account team and they'll get it to us. This one was also published earlier today. Microsoft Intune announced Android Enterprise Management support for Android XR, which I believe is the Galaxy XR devices. The Galaxy is that right? Yeah, it's not. It's the headset. So I don't know if anyone's managing that, but you can in Intune now. Woo.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I could see in some K-12 spaces where they would, just like we have esports and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't think about K-12 and esports. I did think about research institutions and who might be leveraging it, but yeah,
there could be something out there.
Yeah. What else am I missing? A lot. I didn't have them all pulled up. Do you have them pulled up, Richard? If not,
I don't.
It's okay. Hold on.
You have more links.
I'll just pull them up. You're just gonna see it in real time because I wasn't as prepared as I normally am. Yeah. Do you want to talk about this one? That's probably the big one.
Yeah. Just a reminder that, because we've already talked about this once, but this is coming May 2026 by default. We'll be going we'll have auto patch, or I'm sorry, we'll have hot patch turned on by default in May in the Windows B release for May 2026. And so today, if you want to get into hot patching, you have to enable it through a quality update toggle. That's going to change in the future to not require you to toggle that to turn it on, but if you want to turn it off, then you would want to create the quality update to turn that off if you don't want groups of devices not having hot patch. So this basically just kind of goes through and explains between auto patch and hot patch what you're getting with it, why we're doing it, and really how it pertains into the entire security ecosystem within Windows, as it pertains to Windows, Entra, auto patch, all of that. So,
It's kind of lengthy.
it's a longer post. But it basically it complements the original announcement from Chris and Chris Tulip's original blog post.
Perfect. This was the next one. Driver security.
Yeah, I don't know that this really is going to impact most on this call out. Like, this is really primarily for our hardware driver
OEMs.
manufacturing partners. Yeah, the OEMs. But just know that we're doing some work here on making a more secure experience on the driver side of things.
Yep. And this was a big one.
Yeah, app updates. This is primarily around the end of life of the Microsoft Remote Desktop app. So that does not mean the end of life of MSTSC. MSTSC is still in box and Windows. We're not getting rid of it. This is the remote desktop app that you'd use to connect to Windows 365 and Azure Virtual Desktop. That ended on March 27th, and everyone should move over to the Windows app if you're using AVD or Windows 365. If you haven't done that yet, the remote desktop app won't stop working, but it's out of support. So you're not going to get security updates. If you call into support with an issue, they're going to tell you to update to the Windows app. So what this blog post shows is just basically all the improvements that we have made to the Windows app over the last year.
Which I have to say, so I was actually finding with something on Richard on this when we were testing something, and my Windows app kept, like, every time I launched my cloud PCs, my Windows app would it would log me out, and apparently that's a feature, not a bug. There's a auto log off capability now for the Windows app, which is really designed for shared devices. So if you have kiosk machines and you want them to be able to launch that Windows 365 session to the cloud PC or even AVD, you can connect and then it will log out of the Windows app directly, but maintain your session inside of the cloud PC or the virtual desktop. So heads up, that is there. It is a registry key that you can go change. And so if you're hit by that automatically, it's by design, not
that was on by default for you. What were you connecting to?
Like Windows 365, is that what you mean?
No, I know, but what was it? Enterprise? Was it frontline shared?
Yeah. Well, it was all of them actually. It didn't matter which machine.
That's got to be a
session host.
That's got to be a bug, because
I'm telling you, it's a feature.
Well, no, I mean, it's a feature because it includes auto log off, but we document the registry values for that. I know that that's intentional, but for shared device, like for frontline shared, I can understand it. But even well, actually, not even frontline shared. For
I see what you're saying. Yeah,
for anything that
for shared devices.
Yeah, because it explicitly says in the blog post it's for shared devices.
Yeah, I just don't know if it detected like shared PC policies or something. I need to go in and look.
Yeah, because that was really weird. When you had that, like, because you were asking about it, I'm like, I have no clue. Like, I don't see this at all.
I know. When I shared it for him, he even gave the little shock face, and I was like, I shocked Richard? Like, what?
Like,
when does that happen? That's weird. Anyways, so little call out there for that on that blog. And then the last thing that I wanted to share with you all is the Windows 365 connector for Power Platform and Azure Logic Apps. So I've had a number of customers approach me and say, hey, when a cloud PC has been provisioned for a user, how is the user supposed to know when it's ready? Well, now we have some connectors into Power Automate or Azure Logic Apps so that you can do those things and build your own custom workflows to send an email to that user once a Cloud PC has been provisioned. So I actually want to test this out myself and see how well it works, but it's pretty exciting to have that capability.
Now, Gary, you know what would be really good is if we tied this in to this thing called multi-admin approval. So you can get a notification. So you can get a notification when something needs to be approved. I don't know. Just a thought.
Just an idea.
Yeah. Funny enough, I've been the PM for multi-admin approval for.
Oh no, Dave! So... You should not have said that. You shouldn't have said that. You're in trouble.
So now I've broken myself into jail.
You're in trouble now, because we were just talking about this like 2 weeks ago when all everything with Stryker comes out, and so our blog post goes up saying, hey, people should use multi-admin approval, and I start talking about it, and I'm like, I'm not so sure that multi-admin approval is really like the thing here because of the no notifications and all that other stuff. So there's some room for improvement, is what we came out with last week or a couple weeks ago.
It is a thing that can help. It isn't necessarily the thing.
Right.
that is the final answer for how to mitigate. But definitely I'll say, sorry to interject in the middle here, but I'll say that the MAA team has heard loud and clear that notifications are critical for you to understand exactly what you need to go review and approve. And so if there's something in the middle that before the team takes on that work, like using Azure Logic Apps to determine whether or not there's new MAA or any other items that show up in admin tasks, that's a great stopgap before the team delivers it. But definitely we have notifications on the roadmap for filling out for admin tasks. It'll actually be an admin task, not just MAA. So MAA get the benefit, but also security tasks as well as EPM approval requests would get the benefit of there's something new showing up for you to go pay attention to.
Awesome. Very cool.
That's great. Richard, I don't
is
know.
Is it okay with everybody if we use the pager connector for your Motorola pager? That'll be the way we're planning on notifying everybody.
I think so. I bet there's at least one customer on this call right now that they probably have pager somewhere. Especially if you're like an academic medical center, I'm sure there's probably someone that's got a pager.
Yeah. No, we'll be a little bit more modern than pagers.
Yeah. Okay, so the last thing, and then we'll jump over to Dave here. I just wanted to really quickly call out Secure Boot. So I posted a link to this updates and announcement history. Save this link because this is where we add. And we just notify you of new things that we're adding to either our documentation around Secure Boot, or if there are any new Ask Me Anythings. And so on April 2nd, we posted something about the Windows Security app. So the app that sits in your task tray that tells you like Defender scanned something and it didn't find anything. That app, if you open it up, you can actually look at your Secure Boot status if it's on. But we're going to improve that actually in the next update starting tomorrow. I think it should start rolling out, where it'll give you the Secure Boot status of the certificates on the machine. So someone could easily go and check that. Now for enterprise and education SKUs, you're not going to see that by default. There's a policy you'll have to turn on. It basically just a reg hack that you'll have to enable for that to show up. But for home and pro devices, that should be enabled by default. So that should land starting tomorrow. It'll be rolling out. May not hit everyone right away, but it'll eventually come out in the next release of the Windows Security app. And then on April 23rd, we're doing another AMA on Secure Boot. We've done these previously. In fact, I think March 12th, you can see right there, March 12th on demand, there's another AMA. So if you have more Secure Boot questions, you want to talk to our engineering team, just like with the last AMA, you can go ahead and do that too. So that was it.
Awesome. Okay, Dave, we'll turn it over to you if you're ready. Just validate you can share and.
Sure.
And really quick, Dave, how do you want to handle, if there's specific questions, do you want to take questions throughout? Do you want to save them for the end? Do you have a preference?
we can take questions throughout. I've got a separate screen where I've got the chat for this meeting scrolling, so I can monitor the chat, and we can take questions as we go. I think that'll be fine.
Okay, perfect. Okay, well, we're turning it over to you now.
Okay. Thanks for having me. I'm Dave Randall, Senior Product Manager in the Intune engineering team. I've been here at Microsoft for a few years. We did have pagers when I started here, so that gives you an idea. I've been here for at least more than 2 or 3 years. I currently own the Intune RBAC space. I own the Intune Graph APIs. And as I mentioned, I also owned multi-admin approval, and I've owned the admin tasks feature that we added end of last year. So all of those, to be honest, are fair game. If you've got questions at the end on some of those other areas and we have a little bit of time, feel free to ask questions on them. And Richard and Garrett, if you need to have me back, if there's enough interest to cover topics on Graph, MAA, admin tasks, or any other things related to RBAC, I'm happy to join and share with you guys. Okay, so for today, what I wanted to cover was how the scope tag deunion, or the separate permissions feature that we just made available in public preview, how that works. So I'm going to start here in the administrator console. I'm under roles, and you'll notice that we used to have a item here called administrative licensing, I believe. That got renamed to settings, and when you select it, we have a couple of capabilities that are listed in here. First off, we just copied exactly verbatim the controls and everything for unlicensed administrators. So for my particular tenant, I don't require Intune license for any of my administrators. I have this enabled. This is a one-way setting. Once you've enabled it, you can't go back unless you call support and they revert that back. But usually for most customers, that's something that they commonly enable, especially if you have vendor staff that are using Intune for remote support or help desk support. Okay, so scoped permissions. The tagline here is we want to separate resource permissions associated with scope tags. And this is a recommended behavior. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to explain the word separate, the word resource, the words permissions, and the word scope tags. We're going to go through each one of these so that you have a clear understanding of exactly how we got to the place where we needed to do this, because you've been living with combined resource permissions since the beginning of time. So what I'll do is I'll share this screen, and let's walk through, first off, a little bit of the basics, and then that will help you understand what happens when scope tags get created. So here I've got 2 Intune roles. I've got an application manager role that has, for apps, just standard CRUD operations. And I've got a device manager role, which also has a couple of resources and standard CRUD, plus a run permission for scripts. So pretty basic set of permissions that are assigned to 2 different roles. Now, each of those roles will have a role assignment. And in the case of our app manager role, we've got a role assignment that I called UK division. I've got my admin groups of UK admins, and I've got my scope groups of UK employees. Pretty straightforward, pretty basic. And then for the device manager role, I've got a UK division role assignment, and I've got some UK admins, and I've got some UK employees. These could be different scope groups. These could be, they could be different scope groups, but the thing that's common between them is the admin groups is both UK admins. So what happens in the back end is we look at the group that you're in, the permissions that you're granted, and we build a master list of all the permissions across all roles and all role assignments. So what you end up with for our UK admins is a set of permissions that includes apps, scripts, and devices, and all those permissions that are associated with those individual resources. So you can, if any of you, and realize I'm going to jump way into the weeds here, if you go network trace, if you use the developer tools and you look at the network API calls, you'll see a call called get effective permissions. And that happens when the UI is loading up a blade. We want to know what permissions you have. And that API call returns this big list in the orange box. Returns for all resources what permissions you have. And what I had said was that this is a combined list of permissions for all members of the UK admins group. So that security group that you assigned to both of those individual roles have effectively gone away, and we just now have a single list of all the permissions that are granted to you as a member of the UK admins group. Any questions on this? Because this is a fundamental piece, and I'm going to shift over to now how scope tags change things up a bit. So I want to make sure everybody's on board with the merging of the set of permissions for all the resources that are associated with your roles. Michael, go ahead. If you want to come off mute, that's fine.
Thanks, Dave. I have a quick question for you.
Yeah.
In thinking about this architecture, is it such that the intention for an IT administrator, and for example, in your UK department, that they would have the permission to do things in intra? So they would have an intra role assigned, possibly a custom one that, excuse me, out of breath. It's a really great discussion. So that they would not have permissions in intra to be able to create groups. And because the issue that we run into, and you may be able to get into this, but I'll just mention it briefly, is with the role assignment scope groups. And if a departmental IT administrator has the permission in intra to add members to a group security group, then they could add a group of another department's devices. Thus, their policies are applicable to those devices. That happens, right? I'm not crazy imagining that, right? Okay.
Yep, that happens. So the Entra ID role of Intune administrator not only contains full permissions to do everything in Intune, it also contains a bunch of Entra permissions like user and group management. And so my general recommendation is, except for customers who have basically one or two people who are managing their Intune, I really prefer that you use Intune RBAC and Intune roles, because with that, you have no Entra permissions that you're granting, and you have very specific Intune permissions that you're allowing for managing all things in Intune. So separating out that set of permissions for Entra behavior from Intune behavior, you can do that by just using Intune RBAC. So that's when I say Intune roles, I'm talking about these roles, whether they're built-in roles like policy and profile manager or custom roles. So my preference is that you use this to control all your behavior in Intune, and you use the Entra roles to control your grouping, behavior, and so forth in Entra. So
yeah, our workaround for this is we do have a config manager infrastructure on-prem. So we use CloudSync. So we CloudSync our collection, so departmental IT administrators are able to manage their intragroup memberships by managing the collections that they have access to in config manager. And also going forward, we're looking at using something like a Terraform to define infrastructure. So a department will have a Terraform file, they'll declare what they want, they'll open a pull request in GitHub, it'll be reviewed, approved, they merge it, processes it. So it's definitely a change for a lot of people who are used to just going into ADUC and clicking and adding computers and groups and stuff and creating new things. So good times.
Yeah, and so Ken, I see your message. I see the second thumbs up on that. We are looking at ways of leveraging a better mechanism for scoping. so that you have complete control over scope and the inability to expand scope beyond a set of devices that you've been granted permissions to. Right now, because you can nest a group in an existing scope group, so long as you have group administrator permissions, you can expand the scope of any role. So we realize that's a problem, and we, being me, am looking at that particular problem and how we can solve it. So stay tuned. It's not the kind of thing that's going to show up overnight. However, it's a fairly complex architectural shift from limiting collections in Config Manager, because that's kind of the canonical example that most customers give me. So, all right, so let's continue on back on our roles. So we have a set of permissions that are shared as a single list across all roles that have been defined that you're a member of in an admin group. So let's add let's talk about a new role called Application Manager for Mexico. And in this example, we have an admin group of Mexico admins. We have a scope group of Mexico employees. So this is typical of what you would see, but now we have a new thing called the scope tag, and we've got a simple scope tag called Mexico. That is all associated with the role assignment. And for scripts, you notice that the permission is only read. So this is the one that we're going to kind of focus on. The apps and devices, we have CRUD for both of those. But for scripts, we only have read. So that means any of the Mexico admins can only read scripts. They can't deploy them, they can't change them, anything like that. Now, we also have a, let's see, sorry. I'm going to reuse this. We have an Application Manager UK, which has apps, scripts, and device permissions. And there's this UK scope tag. So our UK admins have a different set of permissions from our Mexico admins. Our Mexico admins only have read for scripts, and our UK admins have full permissions. But you remember what I said was across all roles that the administrator is in the same security group, we merge those permissions. So in the case of a admin, and I realize that I might be a little bit off here, so I might ask you to use your imagination a bit. If you were in a, let me change this so that it's correct. So I have UK admins in my Mexico division. Doesn't quite make sense, but it will for the purposes of this. I have UK admins in my admins group, and they have scripts read. And for any devices that have, or any objects that are tagged with Mexico. And my UK admins have full permissions on scripts for anything that's tagged UK. But what we do is we merge the permissions, and I'm going to change this to UK admins, so that it doesn't matter whether your objects are tagged with UK or your objects are tagged with Mexico, we have the full set of permissions. So what you were expecting is that UK admins who had the Mexico scope tag could only read scripts tagged with Mexico. If the script was tagged with UK, they had full permissions to it. That's what you would normally expect when you create this scenario. So you have a group of administrators with a scope tag that have different permissions from the administrators that have a different scope tag. This might happen in your case for different individual schools. I would imagine most of you are district administrators who have local administrators in individual schools, or possibly you have administrators for different grades and you're using scope tags for that. So what happens is, in the back end, we've merged together all the permissions that are granted for admin groups that have scope tags associated with them. We don't isolate the permission based on, like you saw before, the read permission for just anything that was tagged with Mexico, and give you full permission for anything that was tagged UK. We don't do that. We merge them together, and that's a problem. So going back to our console, and let's see, my console. Yeah, I figured I was going to have to sign in again. Okay, here we are. Going back to my console, this statement now makes a little bit more sense, hopefully. For any resource that has a set of permissions, we want to separate those permissions according to the scope tag that's associated with that role assignment. So that's kind of the decoder ring for this particular sentence. Yeah, Carrie, I see your message about central scope tag, but able to create edit within their own scope tag as an example. You'll need to test this out, but you should be able to do this by separating out permissions. So in order to understand what happens when you click the button, we have this permissions assessment report. And so if I run this, it's going to tell me that a couple of things. We'll walk through this. Let me make this bigger. So first off, we have a security group called Albatross IT Admins. So this is our admin group that has a bunch of permissions that are merged between several scope tags. So the Albatross IT Admin security group is assigned the policy and profile manager and the service principal limited access role. So let's go take a look at that. If we go to all roles and we go to our policy and profile manager and look at assignments, let's see if Alice, this is just, here's the Albatross IT admin. So this is the admin group that is assigned to policy and profile manager. And you'll notice there's a couple of scope tags that are associated with this role assignment. And then our other role assignment that we had was service principal limited access. And that has one role assignment with Albatross IT admin in it and one scope tag called Washington. Now, if we look at this particular role and we look at the permissions that it has, you see it only has a small number of permissions, only 4 permissions. So let's go back to our report. And so we verified that Albatross IT admin is the security group that's in policy and profile and service principal limit. Washington, sorry about that. Hopefully this will be back shortly. It's killing my rhythm here. Yeah, exactly, Tom. You know it's not recorded. all that is percolating. Let me see if I can bypass that. It's another authentication to the same tenant. All right, success. So we verified and we saw in service principal limited access, there was a scope tag Washington and that was associated with that role assignment. And for the resource device configuration, maybe it'll be helpful if I can pull both of these up at the same time. Okay, so for device configuration permission, we have read permission. And in the report here, the old permissions, which were the merged permissions, were create, read, update, delete, assign, and view reports. But after we separate them out, any of the administrators who were in the service principal limited access role now will only have the read permission for device config. So device configuration is the only conflicting permission resource that we had between these two roles. So once I click the enable button, now any of the Albatross IT admins looking at scope tag Washington will only have read permissions. And that's based on our assignment that we had where the scope tag is Washington. So if we go back, let's go back and just for grins, we looked at the properties. There's several permissions that are in this particular role assignment. We have mobile apps, organization, and partner device management. But if we go to the other role, which was the conflicting role, our policy and profile manager, and we look at the permissions that are here, the only conflicting one that we had was device configuration. And you see these are the permissions that were granted under this permission, under this role. So none of those other permissions were conflicting. And this is part of the challenge I think that folks are going to have when they first read this report, is we've kind of abstracted out a bunch of data. Because device configurations was the only resource that is shared between these two role assignments, it is the only one that is going to get new permissions. The other permissions that already existed in each of those role assignments remain as they were. It's just that now, instead of merging the permissions for device configuration resource across the Washington scope tag as well as the other scope tags, now you're only going to have read permissions for anything tagged as Washington. You won't have those full set of permissions. So I see that there's a little bit of chatter. So Garrett said, remember the report's available prior to running the assessment. So yes, you can run it as much as you want prior to you enabling scoped permissions. And so that way you understand which roles, which security groups are impacted, which equates to which users. Unfortunately, we don't break out the list of users. And that's one request that I've had. It'd be nice if you could just list all the users in the security group, but that's a fairly easy thing for you to pull up side by side with Entra. or using a separate browser and just looking up your group. So you should be able to find that relatively easy to see who's impacted. And then hopefully you've got the decoder ring so that you now understand what the old permissions relate to, what the new permissions relate to, and how you can understand what's going to change for your customers or for your admins. Okay, so let me go back. Let's see. Ken says, we handled this by creating a global scope tag in a role that has read and assign permissions on everything. This allows them to see and assign all policies we create, and then have a second role that has CRUD on scope tags that are created for each department. This allows them to see only global. Not sure if this kind of flow would work for you in response to what Carrie was after. So I'll let you guys chat about that. With scope permissions, correct. I'll let you guys deal with that. And then Joseph, you said, so if my permissions assessment report says no data found, I can enable scope permissions and expect no change. And that's correct. And to be honest, for all of you, if you run the generate report and you get nothing, please enable scope permissions. And the reason why I say that is twofold. One, in the long run, I want to force that button on for customers that have no conflicting permissions across all their roles. Because I'll be honest with you, it wasn't the right design in the very beginning. And so now we're kind of having to go retroactively figure out how to give you the control that we should have given you in the beginning. And so the long term, which I think Garrett had mentioned, was eventually this is going to be enabled for everybody. So if you don't have anything that is broken today, enable it, keep yourself out of jail, and then you won't have to worry about having shared permissions across multiple scopes. And you kind of know that you're in control of the button before some point in time in the future, months away, maybe a year or 2 years away, we force the button on for everybody. I'm going to give everybody plenty of time. So for those of you who have items that show up in your permissions assessment report, you're going to want to understand what the impact of that is. And you might go change your role and role assignment, or you might say, ha, 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 that's perfect. That's exactly the way I want it to work. And so I'm going to go click the button. We're going to separate out the permissions by scope tag. And I'm going to let all my admins know your permissions have changed. You might have had create, read, update, delete for the Washington scope tag in the past. You don't have it anymore. You only have read. So, here's how it's going to impact you. You'll need to communicate that to your administrators. But then once you've enabled that, I'm surprised somebody hasn't asked the question. So I'm going to go ahead and ask the question of myself and answer it. Can you undo that button? And the answer is you cannot undo the button. However, if you find that it's problematic and people are all up in arms because they've lost permissions to things, you can't figure out how to rework the permissions, you can call support and you can ask them to turn back off scoped permissions. So there is a support approved method that our support team have to basically flip that flag back on. You don't have the ability. It's not the way I don't want people flipping back and forth. You shouldn't be doing that. That's one of the reasons why I think having this call is a great opportunity for you guys to get everything understood so that you're prepared. You know what the changes are going to be. You can communicate with everybody and you can click the button once and everything is all good to go for moving forward from that. So let's see. Carrie doesn't count since he was in private preview. Yes, that's true. Okay, let's see. Tom says, we would love to have scope tags affect more reports, even if the short term you just add scope tags to the report so we can filter by them. I completely hear you on that. We have an internal scorecard, Tom, where we're going through all the reports, identifying which ones don't honor scope tags, filing bugs with the teams to make sure that they are honoring scope tags. So I don't know, to be honest, whether or not giving you a UI filter on that is a better short-term solution than just having them fix the reports. But I hear you on being able to use scope tags universally across reports. And then Tom, you also said we don't have the allow access to unlicensed admins, but our admin accounts also have A1S, so I'm not clear why we work. Okay, so I can spend a moment about unlicensed administrators, and I'm gonna give you all a little bit of a peek under the covers about how things work as well, to explain how unlicensed administrators work. So when you create a role, and let's just go look at our policy and profile manager and look at the assignment. Our Alice assignment has the Albatross IT admin security group in it. When you specify the security group and Intune determines the list of people who are in this group, we use exactly the same mechanism as if you were to come to apps. Let's go to Windows apps, go to Anatomy X, and take a look at our assignment. If I were going to add a security group here, let's say Albatross users, if I was going to add this security group here, the people that you want to deploy this application to are people that are licensed for Intune. If they don't have an Intune license, we don't want to deploy to them. So the mechanism that exists in the back end to understand who is an effective member of this group that we can deploy to looks at the license count, looks at the licenses that are assigned, the Intune licenses that are assigned to Albatross users. And it creates it keeps track. I'll just say it keeps track of who has a license in Albatross users and who doesn't. And it uses that to make sure that when we're deploying our Anatomy X app, it only goes to licensed users. Since that mechanism is shared with RBAC, if you have an Intune license, you get the RBAC role. But a lot of customers said, hey, I've got vendor teams that I don't manage their devices and I don't assign licenses to them. So we created the unlicensed administrator flag to allow you to just say, if you log in as an authenticated user in this tenant and you have RBAC permissions, you can do administrative things. But that's the gate. You have to have Intune permissions to do things in the console. Hopefully that wasn't too much of a side bit. Hopefully you guys all grokked that, but that's how the unlicensed administrators feature came to be and when you would want to use that. Let's see. Ken says, I ran the report in our own instance and we have 17 entries. I'm not sure what our next step should be to make sure we do not have issues. So Ken, what I would suggest you do is you look at each one of those individuals, start with the group, take a look at which roles are assigned to that group, and look at the conflicting resource. And then identify for that conflicting resource whether or not administrators who have that specific scope tag, you want them to have the new permissions or not. And I would just work your way top to bottom. Let's see. Fred says, and I'm watching, we got 2 minutes left here. So actually, Samuel asked earlier, is there anything on the roadmap to extend scoping for devices beyond what's currently available with filters and dynamic groups? We are looking at other properties to add to filters. Dynamic groups, I have not heard that the Entra team is looking to add additional properties for dynamic group rules. So that's my answer on that. There is some work I mentioned earlier. We're looking at different ways to be able to do scoping from within Intune that doesn't allow you to expand the scope beyond the security group that you've defined for your role assignments or for your deployments. And let's see, I think the last one, due to compliance, we have a privileged separate account to administer Intune and Entra. Does this allow us to reduce our A5 licenses for this purpose? You do not, Intune does not license administrators. They license users who are managed by Intune. Being very specific on the wording, I'll let you interpret that. You might want to check with your compliance team, but Intune does not sell licenses for administrators. We sell licenses to manage users with the tenant.
And Dave, I think there was one that we missed. It was also by Fred.
Okay.
He was late to join. How does scope permissions help us with delegating computer group management to distributed groups that does not also allow them to circumvent security? And I think we kind of talked about this a bit before he got on.
Yeah, I think the answer, Fred, is that when you separate the permissions, you're using your scope tags to define sets of distributed groups that are managed with a specific set of permissions for each of those delegated groups. Scope groups are technically not a security mechanism. They're a filter. They end up behaving like a security mechanism that prevents you from managing devices or objects that have been tagged. Yes, if you need PIM, you need P2 for Entra roles, or PIM eligible group also do work for Intune role assignments. That's correct, Dan. Okay, so we're at the top of the hour. Thank you for having me. I hope this has been enlightening. If you have follow-up questions, please funnel them through Garrett. Garrett can get back to me, and I'd be happy to answer your questions offline if we need an additional session on anything else. Richard, Garrett, feel free to coordinate some time. Love to talk with all of you guys. Getting your input is hugely valuable to the product group, and I thank you for your time.
Well, thank you, Dave. We definitely appreciate it. I think everyone appreciates you coming on, so thanks a lot.
Great. Yeah, great talk.
You're very welcome.
Yep, thanks everybody. And then I will have to do some light editing of this, so it'll be a little bit before I get it posted to YouTube, but I will get it as quickly as possible. And then we will see you guys in a couple of weeks. So thanks again. Round of applause for Dave with reactions, and we'll see y'all soon.
You guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Dave. Bye.